The chapel series that has been in play, talking about the kingdom. Let me just mention too, as was mentioned, this book, Incarnate, Jesus Among the Broken. I brought what I could, and you can have them. I know you're not probably looking for another book to read, but it's a story-laden book, and it might be an encouragement to you if you get a chance to pick one up. Kingdom of Sabbath is our theme for today. Sabbath was built into the very rhythm of creation. As God created everything in the universe, created this world, and on the seventh day he rested. There's a rhythm to that. Living into the kingdom of God involves living into a Sabbath rest and finding our delight in God. There may be a different approach today thinking about the Sabbath than just taking a nap. It's not about simply replenishing our physical person. It's actually replenishing our soul and our spirit. And we find our true Sabbath rest when we get away from the things that occupy our time and our energy. Sometimes selfish things we get involved in. They're not bad things, but we have personal desires and things we pursue. We need God. And when we come away from the things of this world and find Jesus, rest in him, that's really where we find our Sabbath is in him. Sabbath is a foretaste of heaven. We've been worshiping here. Beautiful worship experience. It seems you have a heart for worship. I'm hearing about the prayer events that you have on Monday nights and the atmosphere and the attitude of wanting more. That is something God is going to honor in you. We get a foretaste of heaven. We're going to have a Sabbath for eternity. I'm excited about getting there someday, not trying to rush it, but at the same time, as broken as this world is, it becomes more and more appealing that heaven is going to be such a beautiful Sabbath for all of time. It's being in his presence. It's that shalom, that peace that only he brings. Sabbath is a reminder that ultimately life depends not on our hard work. Our work is important, but our Sabbath relies on God's provision and on his grace. Keeping the Sabbath is grounded in understanding God's heart. Rather than developing increasingly detailed rules and kind of systems that we follow, finding our Sabbath rest is not just the routine of Sunday is our Sabbath day, we keep it holy. It's that our hearts need to stay tuned to God and we follow his will and his purpose for us. Matthew chapter 11, verse 28, Jesus speaks about where we find our rest. Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Sometimes we can get into the mindset that if we sell out to God, he's going to require something of me that is too difficult. What Jesus said is we really learn of him. He's gentle, lowly in heart. The most humble person in the universe is Jesus. Think of that God is that humble. Who Jesus is, he came and laid down his life to give himself up for us. He's lowly of heart. He wants to give us rest. When we sell out to him, we find our Sabbath. He's not going to make things more difficult for you or for me. He's going to make this journey beautiful and attainable and doable. When we find his power and his grace, his yoke is easy, his burden is light. Isaiah 58 is another passage that speaks about Sabbath. The children of Israel were always going through ups and downs, straying from God, coming back to God. And in the season of coming back to him, they were praying, they're fasting. Some spiritual disciplines we should all be about. And then God starts defining for them what a genuine true fast looks like. Isaiah 58 and verse 6, is this not the fast that I choose? To loose the bonds of wickedness, to undo the straps of the yoke, to let the oppressed go free and to break every yoke? Is it not to share your bread with the hungry and bring the homeless poor into your house? When you see the naked, to cover him and not to hide yourself from your own flesh? Then shall your light break forth like the dawn, and your healing shall spring up speedily. Your righteousness shall go before you. The glory of the Lord shall be your rear guard. Then you shall call, and the Lord will answer you. You shall cry, and he will say, here I am. If you take away the yoke from your midst, the pointing of the finger and speaking wickedness, if you pour yourself out for the hungry and satisfy the desire of the afflicted, then shall your light rise in the darkness and your gloom be as the noonday. These are some shocking words to me. Where do I find my rest? When I take care of broken people, when I see someone in need and I care about them. I'm somehow aligning myself with the heart of God, who cares about them more than I do. He wants me to come alongside with him. And when I start looking at broken people and seeing their value and pouring myself out for them, suddenly I get restored. I get energy. I find peace. I find his presence in that posture. And the Lord will guide you continually and satisfy your desire in scorched places and make your bones strong. He wants to give us everything we need. And you shall be like a watered garden, like a spring of water whose waters do not fail. And your ancient ruins shall be rebuilt. You shall raise up the foundations of many generations. You shall be called the repairer of the breach, the restorer of streets to dwell in. If you turn back your foot from the Sabbath, from doing your pleasure on my holy day, and call the Sabbath a delight, and the holy day of the Lord honorable, if you honor it, not going your own ways, or seeking your own pleasure, or talking idly, then you shall take delight in the Lord, and I will make you ride on the heights of the earth. I will feed you with the heritage of Jacob your father, for the mouth of the Lord has spoken. When God speaks about the Sabbath, that we should keep it, we turn away from our pursuits to honor him. It really is something we can do not just one day a week. We can find our Sabbath in the middle of any day. There are times I find that when I'm working, my mind can get crowded with too many things, and it's healthy for me to get up and take a walk. Sometimes I'll just walk around our campus and let my thoughts, my prayers be lifted up to God. I'm finding a Sabbath right in the middle of the day, getting the things I'm working on settled in his presence, and then I can come back and get renewed and refreshed in what I'm doing. Sabbath is something we can find in amazing ways, in beautiful places. It's about connecting to his heart. It's not just keeping a rule or a regulation. Matthew 9 and verse 30, let me just make this comment. We will find our Sabbath when we take on the Spirit of Jesus. That's where we find our Sabbath. Matthew 9, verse 36, when he saw the crowds, he had compassion for them because they were harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd. When I discover who Jesus is, it transforms me. In the world we live right now, we look out beyond the church, beyond our beautiful confines of faith and being with others of faith. We need this community. We need one another. And it's a precious, special place. When we look beyond it, we see our community and we see crowds of people, and many of them are in really hard places doing really awful things. This world is a mess. This world is broken. If we're not careful, we begin to look at ourselves as the place to be, and those people like we don't even care about anymore, and we start pointing fingers at them like the scripture said not to do. We don't point fingers, but we get the heart of God and we help the broken. We help the poor. We don't try to find out, are they people of faith so that they're one of us? No, they may not be, and therefore we go to them like Jesus does. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion on them. What happens for you? What happens for me when we see broken people, when we see a real serious mess? I've been here for a couple of days. I walked around downtown Seattle. I came across corners of tents, homeless people. I know it's an increasing challenge here. It is in our community in Sacramento. We're finding tents on sidewalks and right by our church, next to our property, tent villages. It's really challenging. I've been around friends, people of faith, who get disturbed by these scenes. And we start saying all kinds of things about it, like, man, it's just such a blight on our community. We need to get these people out of here. And what's their problem? Why don't they just get a job? You know, they made so many decisions to get themselves in these places. And we can begin to dehumanize them. We can think of them as something other than human. When Jesus saw the crowds, I'm trying to think of what would he do if he were here in person, like he's here in spirit. He's here in you, he's here in me. What happens if I let Jesus see through me and I start seeing what he sees and my heart starts to be drawn to these broken people and have compassion for them? That then I line up with his heart, seeing them as harassed and helpless. They can't help themselves. They don't know what to do anymore. They're broke. They don't have a way out. Could I have compassion at least in my heart and think differently about them? Compassion becomes real when we recognize our own humanity. I get to a place where I think I'm above some things. It's easy to get there. I need to stop and realize, no, I'm a broken human being. I'm thankful for God's graces in my life. I have had so many privileges, being born into a pastor's home, being raised in a godly environment in a church youth group, coming to a Christian college. All of these things are just amazing opportunities. I look back at it and have wonder at God's grace in my life. But there are people that weren't born into what I was born into in the house next to me. People that didn't have parents of faith. People that had brokenness and broken dreams. Families that broke apart. Alcoholism, drug addiction in their life. And all of this brokenness that the enemy tries to destroy people with, people fall under. And they find themselves in these places. Compassion becomes real when we recognize that could be me. I could have been born into that. I need to think differently about who I am. I'm not something special or above. I am broken and I am below. And I need God's grace to help me, make me strong. And when he makes me strong, now I can look at others with compassion because I see me in them. Compassion is a relationship between equals. I'm not better than them. They're not lesser than me. We're equal. We're humans that Jesus came and died for. They need love, grace, and mercy just like me. In 2014, we were working through our church ministry in our city with a number of churches developing an outreach in the winter season for a winter shelter for the homeless. Our mayor at the time, Kevin Johnson, he grew up in Sacramento. He was a basketball player, played in the NBA with Phoenix Suns, finished his career, and he moved back home to Sacramento and became our mayor. Grew up in faith. He made a connection with me and invited me in to be a pastor on his panel of trying to find community leaders to make a difference in the community. He asked if we could organize churches. We organized 30 churches to open their doors from the end of November to March. Our winter season isn't too severe, but it gets rainy and cold enough, and it's dangerous for people living on the street. We had churches that would open their doors to take in about 100 to 150 homeless every night. They would bus them from downtown to a church. We would try to take about a week at a time, so they come back to the same place for a week. Feed them hot meals. The churches volunteered, paid for the food, let them stay in their places, had volunteers come along and love on those people. In the morning, fed them, and then the buses would take them back downtown. They could navigate the daytime fine. The nights was so beautiful to have shelter and a place of safety. We did that for about 4 or 5 years. And then the city ran out of funding. They funded the buses. There was cost to that every day. They funded a couple of security people that would be at each place every night. And it was about $150,000 for that 5-month period that the city provided. Everything else the churches did for free. We came to a year where the city ran out of money for this program, and they were going to shut it down when the mayor asked me, hey, you got this organized before. Do you think there'd be a way you could help raise the funds? We needed 2 years' worth, $300,000 to fund it, or we'd have to shut it down. And I said to him, well, I don't know, man, let me see what we can do. I went back to my office and met with our team of our staff, let them know what we were thinking of, and started just brainstorming. And I'd had an idea in my mind I hadn't shared with anyone. And someone else said it, sitting at the table that day. They said, what if you went and lived on the street among the homeless for a couple of weeks? And we developed a program like a social media campaign. We could call it Rev on the Streets. And then people could give to get you home. Like, okay. I actually had that thought, but wasn't sure. And someone else shared it. I thought, maybe it's a God idea. I called my wife, asked what she thought. I didn't want to do it if she didn't want me to. And as soon as I mentioned it to her, she's like, that's totally a God thing. She's more spiritual than me. She understands the Spirit when he speaks. And she's like, you should do it. So we worked together for about a week. We didn't put a lot of planning into it, thinking when people go homeless, they don't plan it. They just end up there. So we decided that's what we'll do. The only provision we made was I would have 2 or 3 men from our church that would stay with me at night. I didn't want to be foolish, put myself in jeopardy. But we would just go and find a place on the street like the homeless people do and see what happens. On a Sunday, I shared the story with our church, left the service to my office, left my wallet, my keys, picked up a backpack and a sleeping bag, took the cash I had in my wallet. I didn't even know what I had. It was $60. And that's what I had for 2 weeks to see how to navigate among the homeless. Walked across the bridge over our freeway. There's a light rail right across the freeway. Rode it downtown, stayed there for 2 weeks. Tried to find a place. Found a place in an alley that seemed a little bit guarded behind a fence. Every night there were people up and down that alley dumpster diving right at where we were. It would wake you up startled in the middle of the night. I still felt comfortable enough because I had other guys with me that were helping to keep things secure. And amazingly, the local media picked up on it and they spoke of it very positively, and people rallied. The money started coming in. In a week, we had raised the whole sum that we needed. It was a blessing. It was like a miracle. I could go home. We raised it. And at the end of that week, there was something about it. I thought, I could go home now. I really want to, but I can't. There's something happening that I wasn't expecting. This was a project, but now it's not. Now it's a spiritual transformation. Now I need to figure out what I'm feeling. I need to understand, what is God trying to show me? It's a Sabbath. I'm out of my routines. I'm trying to get close to him, and I'm starting to see things I haven't seen this way before. I called my wife again to say, I don't know what to do. I feel like I'm supposed to stay. I don't have to, but what would you think? And she's like, I think you should. I stayed a second week simply to figure out what God was saying to me. I'm in downtown Sacramento, Cesar Chavez Park. A lot of homeless people gather. It's right in the middle of a hotel on one side, City Hall on the other side. It's a really business hub, but homeless people congregate right there. I'd been through that park so many times, carrying my latte on my way to the mayor's office for a meeting. I didn't even recognize those people, didn't give them any notice. Saw them, but didn't see them. Now I'm living with them, among them, and that's all I can see. Now I can't see the mayor's office. Now I can't see the hotel with the nice restaurant. Now all I can see is broken people sitting on park benches and sitting beside them saying, what happened? Can you tell me your story? They didn't know who I was. I didn't tell them. I was just wanting to figure this out. What's happening? How can we help? And hearing story after story of broken paths. Some people, mental health issues. There's so many layers of homelessness. Some people, it seems impossible to help. Drug addictions, alcohol addictions, and then some people just bad luck, job change. They're a little more in a transition, probably not going to be there that long. Just all these layers. And as I was sitting next to one person that was having trouble communicating with me, something happened in my heart, and I thought, this person is precious. I don't think I would ever thought that before. Somehow I could see that God's affection is toward this soul. Somehow I read the scriptures different that said when Jesus saw the crowds, he had compassion on them. Why don't I sometimes? Why do I think, man, you're living off my taxes? Why don't you get yourself up, pull yourself up, you can make this happen? They can't. They're broken. They don't know how to get from where they are to where they need to go. And if somehow I can at least care, I felt like there was some kind of miracle going on inside of me that I could not even explain. On day 10, in the second week, I met with some friends of mine. I'm in a small group of about 5 or 6 businessmen. We meet on Wednesdays at 7 a.m. The place of meeting wasn't far from where I was, so I walked there. They weren't expecting me to come. And as I sat down, they, of course, wanted to hear about what was happening. I'm in my 10th day on the street. I hadn't really processed much. I just, trying to sort it out. Now, it's the first time I talked to friends about things started bubbling up inside. I found emotions I didn't know what they were. It happens even right now. I don't understand it. It's still there. I can taste it. I can smell it. I can feel it. And as I shared with them, some of these strong leaders, CEO businessmen started tearing up. And then one of them said one word. He said, incarnate. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, that's what you've done. You've gone incarnate into somebody else's world. Well, I know that word. I learned it here. It's a theological word. It's what Jesus did. He came incarnate into my world. It's John 1, verse 14. And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. And we have seen His glory, glory as of the only Son from the Father, full of grace and truth. He came in the flesh into my world. He incarnated into human form. Why did He do that? Because I was in the crowd, broken, and couldn't help myself. And He didn't say, hey, why don't you fix yourself? Why don't you get a job? Why don't you get yourself together? Jesus came, He said, I love you. Let me show you. He took my sin on Himself. He took all my brokenness. He suffered. He was tempted in every way like me. Hebrews 4. For we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who in every respect has been tempted as we are, yet without sin. Let us then with confidence draw near to the throne of grace, that we may receive mercy and find grace to help in time of need. I want to come close to Him. That's where I find my Sabbath. It's where I find my peace. This world is such a mess, I can't figure out what to do most days. But when I come away to Jesus, He gives me a vision. He gives me a view that is not natural. And now when I walk in Seattle downtown and see tents and homeless, broken people, I know that I can't fix those people's problem myself. But when I walk past them, my heart begins to break. I begin to care. And I'm not walking down there going, man, this is so screwed up our city. Let's get these people out of here. And I feel better about what God is doing in my life. Because every person, whether they're homeless or whether they're a CEO on the top floor of some office building downtown, they need the same compassion that Jesus showed me. And can I show that to them? Our state in California, the whole West Coast seems to be governed by, as we see them, liberal governance and leaders, people. We have that in California, and there's a lot of Christian people today saying all kinds of things about our governor, calling him names and decrying his ways. And something happened to me when I was just waiting in God's presence and praying, and I'm hearing these voices of faith saying terrible things, pointing fingers at these terrible liberal leaders and what they're doing to our country and to our state and to me. I start thinking, well, what are they doing to me? What they're doing doesn't make a difference to me any day of the week. I come to Jesus. I can do whatever I want. I have complete liberty to walk in the faith that He's given me. God started breaking my heart from my governor, who's a liberal mess. And I start thinking of him differently and having a broken heart for broken people. The world is full of people to serve, not enemies to defeat. The people who are not people of faith, they are not our enemies. We know our enemy is the devil and demons. It's totally, scriptures tell us who's against us. Comes to steal, kill, and destroy. Jesus came to give us life, and that life more abundantly. I want to battle the real enemy, and those people who are not following Jesus are not my enemy. They're objects of His affection. Why don't they become objects of my affection too? Every one of them. that God can help me see them different. The incarnate one. As I interacted with drug addicts, alcoholics, mentally ill, lost people, lonely souls, I felt their pain, and it began to matter to me. In this same season, I've had unusual experiences. I developed a friendship with a local rabbi, Mona Alfie. She's the leading rabbi in the leading synagogue, B'nai Israel in Sacramento. She called me one day and asked if I would come to an event she was hosting at their synagogue. Someone had bombed their synagogue 15 years before, and they caught them, and it was anti-Semitic hate. And they didn't want to forget this, and for our community to come together to say we care about each other. And she invited me to come for this. I went and shared a few words with her congregation and others who gathered. It was really special. I felt God's presence beautifully. At that was a imam from the local mosque, Imam Aziz, and we developed a friendship as well. And he said, 2 weeks from now, we have breaking the Ramadan fast. We have about 500 people that we bring in a banquet hall. We have a great meal and then a spiritual message. And he said, would you come and give the message? And I thought, what planet am I living on? I'm being invited to a Muslim event to speak. And he said, I'd like you to talk about your spiritual disciplines. I'm like, okay. I actually called our elders. I felt like some people aren't going to understand this if I actually go. I felt like I should, but that sounds like some people think you shouldn't have any kind of connection. And aren't they our enemy? And our elders said, no, it sounds like something you should do. And I went and I studied hard and found out they have 5 pillars of faith in the Islam religion. 4 of them are very similar to ours. The 5th one, like it's prayer, fasting, giving. One of them is going to Mecca. That was the one we don't do. But I did tell them I've been to Springfield, because that's my Mecca for the Assemblies of God. So we tried to relate, and I shared with them the disciplines we follow, very similar to theirs. And there was something that happened in that moment. I felt God's presence in my heart and in my soul as I shared in a Muslim event with 500 Muslim people that God was there in the most unusual of ways. There was a writer from our local newspaper that had attended both of these events and wanted to write a story about it. I begged him not to, because all I needed was some people in the community to think I'm doing the wrong thing, and it's going to get spun by people the wrong way. But he said it's my job, and he wanted to do it. Sure enough, I got plenty of feedback that wasn't all that kind about a Christian pastor, going to a Jewish and an Islamic event. And all I can say is, you should go too. They're amazing people. They're made in the image of God. They're precious to Him. He looks upon them with compassion. He sees them with the same brokenness that He sees me with. And we're equals, and we all need the same loving Savior. If there's anything I can do, I'll talk to more Muslim people about my faith and how I see Jesus and what He can do. And anytime we get a chance, let's go there and see people through the eyes of love. I had the same experience when George Floyd was killed. It rocked our world. I don't think any of us have seen anything like what we saw, and it was hard not to get out of your mind. And I felt moved to the burden that my black and brown brothers and sisters feel, and the burdens they carry every day that I don't understand. And I've been having conversations in my community to build bridges, to build diversity. We have a lot of diversity in our church because that's the heart of God and what we're trying to do. We just add this week the 5th black pastor to our team. Our worship leader, our children's pastor, our women's ministries leader, our youth pastor, and the pastor that's walked with me for this whole 25-year journey I've been on, Samuel Gordon, that's taught me a lot about how to see the things in the community differently. And I feel moved to try to understand, to listen, to hear, not to walk in judgment of the things that people are struggling with, but to hear their burden, to hear their heart. What can we do to validate? What can we do to love? What can we do to say, man, I don't understand what you've been through, but I want to, and I want to care for you. I want to love you. That's what Jesus would do. Matthew 9, verse 10. And as Jesus reclined at table in the house, behold, many tax collectors and sinners came and were reclining with Jesus and his disciples. And when the Pharisees saw this, they said to his disciples, "Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners?" But when he heard it, he said, "Those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick. Go and learn what this means. I desire mercy and not sacrifice. For I came not to call the righteous, but sinners." I want to go and learn what that means. I want to Sabbath with him to show me, what does this mean? How can I have mercy in my heart and not just think I can just sacrifice everything away, but care? Jesus, his heart, when I learn of him, I find my Sabbath. He sat down with tax collectors, despised people of the day, sinners, and the religious people are like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "This is who I came for." When I see broken people that don't believe the way I do, that are a mess in this world right now, I feel more and more drawn to them. I feel more and more compassion for them. I feel more and more love in my heart. That is it possible the love of Jesus could transform them? We're not called to name calling. We're called to love and mercy. We've been using too many negative names for people who don't believe like we do. He didn't call us to name call. He called us to love and mercy. My homeless experience taught me these things. I look at it as a Sabbath. I didn't have any responsibilities for 2 weeks every day. I didn't have any appointments. I didn't look at my calendar. I woke up in the morning trying to find a restroom. I woke up trying to decide, where do I go today? Who do I talk to? I tried to find every service in downtown Sacramento that takes care of homeless people. I found that the Catholics do the most. Loaves and Fishes, Sister Libby, one of the most remarkable souls I've ever met, who loves God and Jesus as much as anyone I've ever met. She's like Sacramento's, what was the Catholic? Mother Teresa. Wow, through a mental block. She's amazing, and I found such joy and peace there. We've rewritten our mission statement at our church just in the last month. To live as Jesus among the broken, through word and deed, telling people about Jesus and teaching them to follow him. That's our mission. How can I live as Jesus would among the broken? Through my word and my deeds, what I do, telling people about Jesus, teaching them to follow him. Right now, as we speak, I'm in conversations with our county. Our homeless problem is like the one here. And they're trying to figure out, they're throwing lots of money, it's not helping. We have a piece of property where we sit right on the freeway, 4 acres that's undeveloped. The rest of it is all built out. And I thought God put in my heart to offer to them, could we put a homeless village right here? We'll serve it. We have so many volunteers. We've got people that want to do job training, that want to love on people that are broken. How can we help them transition from homelessness? And the county is having a serious conversation with us right now where they would fund it. Tiny homes. We start with a 50 tiny home village, see how it goes. The only barrier is if the people in the neighborhood will allow it. If we can get through that hurdle with our county supervisor, it won't be long, and we'll be serving 50 homeless people right on our own church property. What do we do? Live as Jesus among the broken, through word and deed. Tell them about him and show them how to follow Jesus. I'm still learning how to follow him myself. Father God, I thank you for this divine opportunity, divine moment. May it be a Sabbath for us just to experience you, your heart, your mercy, your love. Pour it over us. Forgive us, wash us, cleanse us, and show us how to see the brokenness of this world through your eyes. We ask for that vision that comes from you. In Jesus' name, amen.